I was working for one of those food delivery apps to make extra cash during college. You know how it is. You take any order you can get, especially late at night when the tips are better. This happened on a Tuesday, probably around 11:30 p.m. I got a ping for a small order, just a burger and fries, to a house in a neighborhood I'd never been to before. It was one of those older, quiet suburbs where the houses are set far back from the street and there aren't many streetlights. I found the address easily enough. The house was completely dark except for a single, dim light coming from a large picture window on the ground floor. As I pulled into the long driveway, my headlights swept across the front of the house, and I killed the engine. The instructions on the app were simple. Leave at door. Do not knock or ring bell. Easy enough. That's my favorite kind of delivery. No awkward small talk. I grabbed the bag, got out of my car, and started walking up the stone path. It was dead silent out. The kind of quiet that makes the crunch of your own footsteps sound deafening. As I got closer to the porch, I glanced at the big, lit window. I don't know why, I just did. It's human nature, I guess. The light inside was coming from a single lamp in what looked like a living room. The room was mostly empty, except for a wooden chair sitting right in the middle of the floor. A man was sitting in the chair, facing away from the window, and in front of him, standing perfectly still, was a woman. At first, my brain didn't really process it. I just thought, okay, they're having a weirdly formal, late-night conversation. But then I noticed something was wrong. The woman was wearing a nice dress, like she was ready to go out. But her posture was stiff, unnatural. Her arms were hanging straight at her sides, and her head was tilted at a slight awkward angle. I stopped walking. I was maybe 20 feet from the porch. The man in the chair hadn't moved at all. He was just sitting there, looking at her. Then, very slowly, he reached out and adjusted her arm, moving it from her side and bending it at the elbow like he was positioning a mannequin. My blood went cold. Absolutely ice cold. This wasn't a conversation. She wasn't standing. She was being propped up. A weird metallic glint from behind her caught the light from the lamp, and I realized there was some kind of stand or pole holding her upright from behind, hidden by her body. I literally couldn't breathe. I was completely frozen, standing there in the dark on this guy's lawn, holding a bag of cold fast food. My mind was screaming at me to run, but my feet were glued to the ground. The man then stood up from the chair. He walked around the woman, inspecting her from different angles. He tilted her head a little more, then stepped back to admire his work, a completely blank expression on his face. That's when he must have caught a flicker of movement from outside. My shadow, or a reflection, I don't know. His head snapped toward the window. He looked directly at me. We locked eyes. It was only for a second, but it felt like an eternity. There was no surprise in his eyes, no shock, just a flat, cold, and immediate understanding. He knew I had seen, and I knew that he knew. It was like a switch flipped. I dropped the food bag, spun around, and sprinted back to my car faster than I have ever run in my entire life. I didn't even look back. I fumbled with my keys, my hands shaking so bad I could barely get the key in the ignition. The car roared to life. I threw it in reverse and peeled out of that driveway, tires squealing. I looked in my rearview mirror as I sped down the dark street. The porch light flicked on, and the front door of the house was slowly opening. I didn't stop driving for 30 minutes. I called the police from a gas station miles away, my voice cracking as I tried to explain what I saw. I gave them the address, my name, everything. They told me they sent a patrol car to do a wellness check. About an hour later, they called me back. They said they checked the house. The man was perfectly calm and cooperative. He told them his wife had passed away from a sudden aneurysm a few days prior, and he was a taxidermist by trade. He was practicing, he said, preserving her. He claimed it was her final wish. The police said that while it was highly unusual, he had the paperwork, and technically, he hadn't broken any laws yet. They said the woman was clearly deceased, and there were no signs of foul play. They told me he mentioned a delivery driver had dropped their food and run off. He told the cops he hoped he hadn't scared me. But the way he looked at me through that window, that wasn't a look of someone worried they'd scared a delivery kid. That was the look of a predator whose hunting ground had just been discovered. For weeks, every time I saw a car that looked like his, my heart would stop. I quit that delivery job the next day. Sometimes I still think about that look. The look that said, "You weren't supposed to know." After my old car finally gave up the ghost, I spent a solid month searching online for a cheap but reliable replacement. I eventually found a great deal on a used dark blue hatchback. It was about 10 years old, had low mileage, and the owner was an older guy who said he was selling it because he couldn't drive anymore. He seemed sweet, a little forgetful, but totally harmless. I paid him in cash, we signed the paperwork, and I drove away thinking I'd scored the deal of the century. For the first few weeks, the car was perfect. Then one afternoon, I was cleaning it out, vacuuming under the seats, wiping down the dash. When I was trying to clean the trunk, the carpet in the back was a little loose on one side, near the wheel well. I tugged on it, thinking I'd just tuck it back in, but the whole panel of a sidewall came away in my hand. It wasn't broken. It was designed to be removed. And behind it, there was a hidden compartment. It was a small metal box, maybe the size of a shoebox, bolted to the car's frame. It had a simple latch on it. My heart started beating a little faster. I mean, who doesn't dream of finding hidden treasure? I pried it open. Inside there was no treasure. It was filled with dozens of small laminated ID cards, driver's licenses mostly, all from different states. And all of them were women. Young women, mostly in their 20s. There were maybe 30 or 40 of them in there. Tucked in the bottom, under the pile of licenses, was a small leather-bound journal. My hands were trembling as I opened it. The pages were filled with handwritten notes. They were dates, locations, and names that corresponded with the licenses. Next to each name were chillingly mundane details. Hair color, brown. Eyes, blue. Met at bus stop on 5th and Main. Complimented her scarf. She was shy. Another one. Hair color, blonde. Eyes, green. Gas station attendant off I-80. Smiled a lot. It was a ledger, a logbook of victims. I felt sick to my stomach. This sweet, forgetful old man. My mind was racing. I needed to call the police, right now. I slammed the journal shut, put it back in the box with the IDs, and closed the compartment. I put the trunk panel back in place, my mind a complete blur. I ran inside my apartment, grabbed my phone, and was about to dial 911 when I got a text message. It was from an unknown number. The message read, "Hello. This is Arthur, the gentleman who sold you the blue hatchback. I seem to have forgotten something very important in the car. It is of great sentimental value to me. I would appreciate it if I could come by and retrieve it. I hope I am not disturbing you." I stared at the phone, my entire body buzzing with adrenaline and fear. How did he get my number? I didn't give it to him. It must have been on the bill of sale paperwork. Of course, sentimental value. My blood ran cold. He knew. Or he was worried I might find it. I didn't reply. What could I possibly say? A few minutes later, another text came through. "I see that you have read my message. I live quite close. It would be no trouble for me at all to stop by right now. Let me know what works for you." He was testing me. He was trying to see if I'd found it. If I said yes, come on over, would he believe me? If I said no, would he get suspicious? I was paralyzed with indecision. My phone rang. It was the same unknown number. I ignored it. It rang again. I ignored it again. Then, a new text. "I am worried you might have misplaced my item. It is in a very specific spot. In the trunk on the left side, behind the panel. Perhaps you could check for me? I would be so grateful." He knew. He absolutely knew that I knew. The pretense was over. He wasn't asking anymore. He was telling me. This wasn't a sweet old man anymore. This was a monster telling me that he knew I had found his trophies. I finally snapped out of it. I grabbed my keys, my wallet, and bolted out the back door of my apartment building. I didn't even go near the car. I just ran. I ran down the street to a crowded coffee shop and called the police from there, my voice shaking so hard the barista asked if I was okay. I told them everything. About the car, the compartment, the journal, the text messages. They took it very, very seriously. They had me wait there, and 2 officers came and took my statement while another team went to my apartment. They found the box, the journal, the IDs. It turned out that many of the women on those licenses were listed as missing persons in cases that had gone cold years, even decades, ago, from all over the country. The sweet old man was a serial killer who had been active for over 40 years. My little blue hatchback was his hunting vehicle. When the police went to his house, he was gone. He had cleared out. The neighbors said he left in a hurry about an hour after I bought the car, packed up a different, older vehicle, and just drove away. The police think he realized his mistake, selling the car without cleaning out his secrets, almost immediately. He was probably watching me, waiting. My discovery of the box just confirmed his fears and forced his hand. They never caught him. At least, I was never told if they did. They have a new name for him now, an identity, but he's a ghost. Sometimes, late at night, I wonder if he ever thinks about me. The person who found his horrible collection. The person who wasn't supposed to know. And I wonder how many other cars he's owned over the years. My acting career wasn't exactly taking off. so I took a lot of odd jobs. The best one I ever landed was house-sitting for a famous horror novelist, Marcus Thorne. He was a total recluse. I never even met him. All our communication was through his agent. The gig was for a whole month at his isolated, sprawling Victorian mansion in rural New England. The pay was insane. The agent gave me a tour. The house was exactly what you'd expect. Dark wood, dusty bookshelves, portraits with eyes that seemed to follow you. It was creepy, but in a cool, atmospheric way. I was a fan of his books, so I was kind of geeking out. The agent laid out the rules. Water the plants, collect the mail. And one very, very specific rule. Marcus's office, she said, pointing to a heavy oak door at the end of the upstairs hallway, is strictly off limits. He does his writing in there. His process is very private. Under no circumstances are you to enter that room. Is that clear? Crystal clear. For that kind of money, I'd pretend the entire second floor didn't exist. The first 2 weeks were a dream. I had this incredible mansion to myself. I read, watched movies, explored the grounds. It was peaceful. But I started noticing odd things. Every night, around 3 a.m., I would hear something from the end of the hall. A faint, rhythmic sound. Thump, thump, thump. It sounded like someone softly knocking. But it was slow and steady, and it always came from the direction of his office. I told myself it was just the old house settling, pipes or something. But it was too regular. It happened every single night. Then, during the 3rd week, a massive thunderstorm rolled in. The power went out. The whole house was plunged into darkness, except for the flashes of lightning outside. I was trying to find some candles in the kitchen when I heard a crash from upstairs. A loud one. It sounded like glass shattering, and it came from the office. My heart hammered in my chest. Did a window break? I had to check. If rain was getting in, it could ruin his stuff, and I'd be in huge trouble. Rule or no rule, I had to at least look. I grabbed a heavy flashlight and made my way upstairs, my footsteps creaking on the old wood. The hallway was pitch black. As I got closer to the office, I could hear a new sound over the storm. A faint, scratching noise. The door to the office was slightly ajar. The crash must have blown it open. I pushed it gently. The beam of my flashlight cut through the darkness. The room was chaos. A huge window was shattered, glass all over the floor. Papers were scattered everywhere from the wind. In the center of the room was a massive, antique writing desk. But that wasn't what made me freeze. On the far wall, there was a section of the bookshelf that was swung open, revealing a hidden doorway. The scratching noise was coming from inside. I felt like a character in one of his novels, the one who makes the stupid decision to investigate. But I couldn't help it. I crept toward the hidden door and peered into the darkness beyond. It was a narrow, steep staircase leading down. I descended the stairs, my flashlight beam bouncing off damp stone walls. At the bottom was a small, cellar-like room. It was cold and smelled of damp earth and something else. Something metallic and foul. The scratching was louder now. In the center of the room was a heavy wooden table. And on the wall behind it were chains. Attached to the chains was a man. He was thin, emaciated, with a long, matted beard. He was wearing rags. He stopped scratching at the floor when my light hit him and squinted, his eyes wide with a mixture of terror and hope. "Please," he rasped, his voice a dry whisper. "Please, help me." I couldn't process it. Who was this man? How long had he been here? And then I saw the desk. Next to the man, there was a small, rickety desk with a typewriter on it. And next to the typewriter was a stack of papers. The title on the top page was The Cellar Dweller, Marcus Thorne's first best-selling novel. My blood turned to ice. This wasn't just a prisoner, this was his inspiration. The thumping I heard every night. It was this man, knocking against the walls. The plots of Thorne's books, the kidnappings, the psychological torture. They weren't fiction, they were biography. He was writing what he was doing in real time. "He's coming back," the man whispered, his eyes darting toward the stairs. "He comes back at the end of the month. To start the next book. That was in 3 days." Suddenly, a floorboard creaked above us. In the main house, both of our heads snapped up. I heard footsteps. Slow, heavy footsteps walking across the main floor. But Marcus Thorne was supposed to be in Europe. His agent said he wouldn't be back for another week. "Who's there?" I yelled up the stairs, trying to sound brave. There was no answer, just silence. Then, the sound of the front door of the mansion closing, and the lock turning. I looked at the man. His face was a mask of pure despair. "He knows," he whispered. "He knows you found me." I heard the footsteps again, this time walking slowly, deliberately, toward the hallway upstairs, toward the office, toward the hidden door. He was home early, and I had just broken his one rule. I wasn't house-sitting an author's mansion. I was trapped inside a monster's workshop, and he was coming downstairs. My friends and I were into urban exploration. We'd find abandoned buildings, hospitals, schools, factories, and spend a night exploring and taking photos. We were always respectful, take only pictures, leave only footprints. Our biggest target was the old shipping district down by the docks. Most of the warehouses were torn down, but there was a cluster of them at the very end of the pier that were still standing, just rotting away. We decided to explore Warehouse 7. It was the biggest one, a huge brick behemoth with boarded-up windows. We found a rusted-out side door, and after a bit of work, managed to pry it open just enough to slip inside. The inside was massive, a cavernous dark space that smelled of rust and stagnant water. Moonlight streamed in through grimy skylights high above, illuminating huge, silent pieces of machinery covered in tarps and dust. It was perfect. We spent a couple of hours exploring the main floor. It was all pretty standard stuff. Old crates, broken equipment, graffiti. Then my friend Liam found a stairwell leading down. The sign above it was so faded you could barely read it, but it looked like it said sub-level storage. Of course we had to check it out. The basement was different. It was a maze of concrete corridors and heavy steel doors, like a bunker. Most of the doors were locked shut, but we found one at the very end of a long hallway that was slightly ajar. We pushed it open. It led into a large windowless room, and the moment we stepped inside, we knew something was wrong. This room wasn't abandoned. It was clean, too clean. The concrete floor was swept, there were no cobwebs, and in the center of the room were 6 large stainless steel tables, the kind you'd see in a morgue or a lab. On top of each table was a large black body bag. All of them were zipped shut. We just stood there, flashlights trembling, the beams dancing across the bags. This wasn't part of the old warehouse. This was new. This was active. Liam wanted to leave right then and there, but my morbid curiosity got the better of me. I had to know what was in them. They looked lumpy, incorrectly shaped. I walked over to the nearest one. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my ears. I reached out a shaking hand and grabbed the zipper. I pulled it down just a few inches. I will never, ever forget what I saw. It wasn't a person. It was parts. A jumble of limbs, torsos, and pieces, all stitched together in a grotesque, mismatched mockery of a human form. It looked like a dozen different people had been taken apart and sewn back together in the wrong order. The skin was pale and waxy, and a chemical smell like formaldehyde filled the air. I gagged and stumbled back. Liam was already by the door, his face white as a sheet. "We have to go. Now," he whispered. That's when we heard it. Click. The heavy steel door we came through had just shut. From the outside. Then we heard the unmistakable sound of a heavy bolt sliding into place. We were locked in. Panic set in. Pure animal terror. We threw ourselves against the door, screaming, but it was solid steel. It didn't budge. After a minute, we heard footsteps coming down the corridor outside. Slow, methodical footsteps. They stopped right outside our door. We held our breath. The silence stretched on for what felt like hours. Then, a small metal slot on the door slid open. The kind they have on a prison cell. An eye appeared in the slot, looking in at us. We couldn't see the person's face, just a single dark eye observing us. It looked at me, then at Liam. Then its gaze drifted over to the table with the open body bag. The eye lingered there for a moment, then looked back at us. It was a look of cold, clinical annoyance, like a scientist who just found 2 rats loose in his pristine laboratory. Then the eye was gone, and the metal slot slammed shut. We heard the footsteps walk away. They didn't say a word. They didn't threaten us. They just locked us in and left. That was almost worse. We were trapped in a basement morgue with stitched-together bodies, and someone knew we were here. Someone who clearly did not want their work disturbed. We were in there for what felt like an eternity. We thought we were going to die in there. We huddled in the corner, as far away from the tables as possible, just waiting. After maybe 5 or 6 hours, we heard the bolt slide back. The door creaked open. The hallway outside was empty. We didn't wait to see who opened it. We scrambled out and ran. We ran through the maze of corridors, up the stairs, and through the main warehouse. We didn't stop running until we were blocks away, back in the city lights, gasping for air. We never told anyone. Who would believe us? And more importantly, what if they found us? The person who let us go, they didn't do it out of kindness. It felt like a warning, a message. They saw us. They knew who we were. And they let us leave so we could live with the knowledge of what we saw, and live in fear that they could find us whenever they wanted. We saw something we were never meant to see, in a place we were never supposed to be. And I think part of their punishment is letting us wonder, every single day, if they're ever going to come back to tie up their loose ends.